Roads to Liberty, part of the Think Liberty Network. That's think-liberty.com for all of your freedom podcasting needs. Think-liberty.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on pretty much all of the apps. Go there. Subscribe. Subscribe to us. Subscribe to one of the other podcasts on the network. We're not the only one, but I like to think that we are the best. And tonight, joining me once again is the man with the plan from Montana, the body armor connoisseur himself, Mr. Lyman Bishop. Sir, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good, brother. How are you?
I am more than good tonight because I had the day off of work, and tonight is my 36th birthday, so things are going great.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Okay, so yeah, tonight wanted to get you on for a couple of reasons. We can do a post-mortem breakdown of your gubernatorial race. We can talk about some of the cool things that you got going on in development right now over at Hoplite, and also because I haven't had a guest in 3 weeks. I keep trying to get this guy that works for the National Association for Gun Rights, and he keeps having to push back because he is embroiled in some election night disputes for pro-gun candidates over on the East Coast. So I'm not mad at all. You know, if you can get some pro-gun candidates into office, you don't have to come on my little show at all. That is fine with me. So let's talk about your race here real quick. I think when the day afterwards, I texted you to see how you did, and you got what, 3.8% of the vote, which is exactly what I got in my race too. So that ain't too bad running third party. Why don't you tell us how that went and what you learned from it?
Well, I think it ended up to be something like 24,000 votes, which was pretty good given my budget of very little. And man, I mean, what did I learn from it? I don't know, because this was such a weird election cycle, right? I mean, you couldn't go out and meet with anybody. Mm-hmm. You couldn't do any of the things that you would normally do, or things that would help people in our position. But the one thing more than anything is that the whole damn thing is corrupt top to bottom. The Republicans pushed to get a party candidate in there, violated campaign finance laws, kept my name off the polls, kept me out of the debates. And unfortunately, of course, as you probably experienced yourself, the Libertarian Party was little to no help whatsoever. But I did what I felt like I had to do. I said what I felt like I had to say, and I'm satisfied with that.
Okay, yeah, that's great. And yeah, the national LP, as far as helping out down ballot races like yours and mine, was, yeah, they didn't really do much of anything for anybody. They were pretty focused at the top. Right. I don't know how things are out in your state, but my state party is top notch. They're great people, and they do a lot of work. And not to make this about me and my race or anything, but I did absolutely no campaigning at all, like zero. I had no billboards, no advertisements, no lit drops, no mailers or anything. I was going to, but with the baby and then the Rona, hitting everybody pretty hard, I just was like, it's not even worth it. I did get a little bit of radio and TV time, which was cool. But what it tells me is that in spite of not doing anything, my area might be ready for this message. So 2022, fingers crossed, maybe get a little bit more opportunity to do things out here on my end. But like I said, this is not going to be about me. This is going to be about you and yours. And so, like you said, national didn't help, and you said that you didn't have a whole lot of budget, which it's understandable when you're running third party. That's to be expected. Are you planning on doing this again in the future? Is any other runs for either that office or any other offices in the state look like they might be in your future?
I honestly have no idea. The one thing that I really felt like coming out of this, and you might have picked up on it in my tone a minute ago, is I really feel like the system is broken, just completely broken, top to bottom. I mean, look at what happened with this election. Look at what we're up against. The deep state is rearing its head, full force. Um, I'm not going to say this in any official capacity, but my gut feeling tells me that secession is really the only option. And I know that's a very bold statement, and lots of people like to reference what happened the last time the states tried to secede. But I genuinely believe that, especially for states like Montana, and I don't know what your state is like or what it's capable of, but Montana does have enough natural resources that, if properly handled, could pave the way for secession. And I really do think that without that, we're genuinely stuck in a system that will never change, that will only lead us further and further, deeper and deeper into tyranny and all manner of control. Look what they're trying to do now with digital currencies. They're talking about microchips. People saw that coming a mile away, and here they are. They're not even hiding it. Klaus Schwab, or whatever, the Dr. Evil looking guy from the World Economic Forum's talking about that pretty consistently and openly, which is absolutely surprising to me that they would just completely pull the mask off and show themselves for who they are. But nonetheless, here we go. So, we'll see. And like I say, I don't say that in regards to secession in any official capacity, because at this time I'm waiting for the dust to settle. Let's see what happens, and then I'll come forward with some sort of plan. As you alluded to, yes, I do have a plan. I have plans within plans. Whether or not I want to do anything with it or just go golfing and have a drink, I haven't decided yet. Yeah, because quite honestly, I don't know that they're. Yeah, here's what really concerns me about it. I mean, we know that there's a contingent within the country that is committed to the ideals of liberty and genuine freedom across the board. But I just don't know that there's a cohesive enough group in the sense that there's enough shared ideology, core ideology, enough motivation to do the things that need to be done. I think most people are just going to sink down in their couch and let it happen. And that's a very sad and pessimistic view, but realistic probably nonetheless.
Yeah, that's something that I've kind of struggled with for a long time now. Is the of people on the more right-wing side of the spectrum. When I say right-wing side of the spectrum, I'm talking about the two-dimensional spectrum where ism and right is liberty and essentially anarchy when you get to the far end of it. But the inability of people on any type of cohesive organizing and coming together, and it really is kind of a self-defeating movement, because when you have people who are hardcore individualists at heart and they demand their own individual liberty, the idea of submitting to a hierarchy, and then one step above that, the idea of being at the top of a hierarchy, ruling over other people, for lack of a better term, is kind of repugnant, which is why these, more right-wing liberty things kind of are flash in the pan and fizzle out fairly quickly. And that's one thing that I think that we're at a severe disadvantage is that nobody on our side and type of thinking, nobody wants to rule over anybody and nobody wants to be ruled over. And that kind of kills you when you're dealing with people who have no idea collectivizing, or have no problem with collectivizing to push their own agenda, and who also have no problems with playing the long game. I mean, when you take a look at the slow march of communism and socialism in this country, the people who started it, they knew that they would not be able to see it come to fruition, and they were okay with that.
Right.
So they're all about the ends and not necessarily being there for this coronavirus thing. They're seeing their opportunity and they're jumping at it, and they do not care who knows.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. They've reached a point where they don't care who knows more. You know, you would really sort of expect this sort of thing to be done in the shadows as it has been, but maybe they've reached kind of a critical mass, and certainly Corona's helped to, you know, create maybe a perfect storm for them where they can just, you know, come right out with it and, you know, openly declare what it is that they're trying to do. And it's obvious, right? I mean, at this point, you know, global tyranny under the rule of a global communist government is without question the goal that a lot of these people have. And, you know, the wealthy elite, things would probably go unchanged for the most part, but for, you know, the common man, that's a real problem. And I don't know if you're familiar with, you know, what's been going on in Canada, or at least, you know, the leaked documents and information coming out of Canada. You know, but apparently there was someone in a what do they call it? Is it the PMO, the Prime Minister's office, or whatever it was? They were in a meeting talking about, you know, next steps, right? And they were talking about a second wave of coronavirus, and this dates back, you know, well over a month ago. And you know, what's the next step? Okay, we're going to bring in a mandatory vaccine, and they're talking about debt relief, right? Wiping out your mortgage and your car payment and your credit cards in exchange for absolute submission, the relinquishing of all claims to private property. And, you know, I don't know if this is true, you know, this document that came out, which I shared on Facebook and which Facebook flagged as fake news, by the way, which gives you an indicator that it's probably true. Um, you know, but what's very interesting is shortly thereafter, the World Economic Forum came out with a video talking about 2030. And it starts off by saying you will own nothing and you'll like it. And, you know, essentially they're saying you're going to rent everything. You'll own nothing. You won't be, you know, responsible for anything. You'll just be a renter. Um, no thanks is my first thought there. And no thanks to anything that they're offering in terms of debt relief or collaboration or taking a vaccine or anything of that nature, right? It just across the board, no. You know, show up at my house to try to force me to do it. We'll see who can inject something into the other person faster, I guess.
Yeah, I am familiar with the well, I don't know, the speech or the meeting or the, you know, the guy in Canada, and whoever that MP was, he brought up a lot of very prescient points when he's talking. He had a thing, a piece of paper where he was reading off how the Canadian government was making provisions for construction of quarantine camps, and he's reading off the exact language that's in these provisions, and he's telling the members of parliament, he's like, these are so vague that anybody could be put into these camps at any time for any reason indefinitely. And if you don't, you know, take the test or take the vaccine or do whatever you're told, you're never going to get out of it. He's like, who wrote this? Who is putting aside the money for these camps to be made a reality? He's like, this is terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. And the fact that he had hecklers in the parliament that were trying to like shout him down. He's like, are you people insane? Have
Yeah.
you lost all sense of what we're doing here? He's like, we cannot do this. And then of course you're also talking about the debt relief. You know, that's not debt relief. When it's we will pay off your mortgage and your car payments in exchange for ownership of the mortgage and the car payments, that's not debt relief. That's just buying you out.
It's slavery.
It is.
Look,
It's it. Go ahead.
beyond that, not gonna let you travel, right? Unless you take the vaccine. You're going to be on house arrest. And they go on to say that, effectively at some point they're going to deal with these people in exactly the way that you described, concentration camps.
Yeah, and then I also saw a video the other day where I don't know what was going on up in Canada. They're always portrayed as being such nice and polite people, but apparently in I want to say it was around Ottawa, but the army was conducting a social experiment where they mailed out forged of this small town they were forged letters that looked like they were coming from the local wild management group or something like that, saying that the government had released some wild wolves to reintroduce the species back into the area, and the population was starting to get out of control, and watch yourself. And the people were like, okay, there's wolves in the area now, and to add to it, the army had set up speakers in the forest playing wolf calls, and they were yeah, and they were trying to gauge the public response to this. I don't know if it was a public response to a wildlife invasive species type thing, or if it was a response to getting an official letter from the government or whatever it was. But when people found out that the speakers were out there and that the army had forged these letters, the army gave some like half-assed bullshit apology and was like, "Oh, this was never supposed to. This was a thought exercise that was never supposed to be put into practice in real world." It's like, well, then who put the speakers up? It's stupid. And I'll send you the video after we get done here tonight. But yeah, it seems like the governments of the world, especially the more like lovey-dovey progressive ones like Canada and Europe and everything, they have the velvet glove on the iron fist, but that velvet glove is starting to get a little bit moth-eaten, and the iron fist is starting to come through a little bit, and they're getting really authoritarian with a lot of stuff.
Yep, that's the direction we're going. And that's where the idea of secession comes from, because what other option do you have to try to preserve your way of life? Because it's clear that if Biden does, in fact, steal the election, win the election, I don't know what's what, but if Biden does, in fact, get into the White House, you're going to be looking at all of those things here in the United States, without a doubt. There's absolutely no question about it. And so at that point, what option do you have but just to get up and go? And I'm reminded of, I think it's Revelation 18:4. Come out of her, my people, lest you suffer her plagues. And that's talking about us, man. I really believe that. The United States has become the whore of Babylon. Years ago, in some other podcast, I alluded to, and it was such a shocking idea to the people at the time that they didn't even want to touch on it. But I really believe that that's the case. And what choice do you have? Come out of her, my people. I really think that's your only option to gain any sense of victory over what's coming. And the good news is it doesn't last forever. You're looking at a 7-year tribulation period. So, okay, fine. Bring it. I'm raising my kids to deal with it. I've sort of shifted gears from preparing my kids for college to preparing my kids for chaos. Genuinely, I just got everybody set up in new kits, got my kids and my wife and myself all lined out in the really high end plates that I sell, the 26300s and some London Bridge carriers and, new guns and tons of ammo and lots of food and generator and, anything and everything to weather the storm. And let's just hope it doesn't go to that. I'm not looking for trouble with anybody. I just want to be left alone like so many other people.
Yeah, that's That's the eternal struggle that we have in this country, is the people who want to be left alone versus the people who. And speaking of the election and Joe Biden possibly winning, I had a bit of an epiphany while I was at work a few days ago, and everybody wants to make a lot of hay about, Joe Biden's going to do this and Joe Biden's going to do that, and then people who are, they think a little bit deeper onto it, and so it looks like the Republicans are going to keep the Senate, and the House is razor thin Democrat majority at this point. So legally and constitutionally speaking, there's not a whole lot that Joe Biden can do, and with a supposedly 6-3 conservative majority, although I think I'm going to discount John Roberts at this point. He kind of throws in with the lefties more often than not. They probably got a video of him fucking a kid or something. I don't know. But there's not a whole lot that Joe Biden himself can do. And so the epiphany that I came to is, what if President Joe Biden is not the goal? If you think about it on chess terms, you got check and you've got checkmate. When you put the king into check, they still have the opportunity to make a move and get out of check. When you put the king into checkmate, it's game over. And so checkmate, to me at this point, we're at checkmate right now, because if Joe Biden pulls out the victory, you're going to have all of the conservatives that are looking at these very, very blatant cases of election fraud that are happening throughout the country, and they're not going to trust an election, any election going forward, at least at the federal level. From this point, a massive reform takes place to the methods at which we vote, and I am personally of the opinion that we need to go full Amish on ID and hand counts going forward. That's the only way, and poll watchers is the only way. But and Donald Trump ends up taking it either through a Supreme Court victory, through persuading state legislatures and friendly electors to the Electoral College, or a contingent election in the House. If any of the paths forward that he has to win, you're going to have the other side of the country that's not going to trust the electoral process at all going forward. So right now we have a 50-50 split that no matter where we go from here, half of the country is not going to trust our electoral process. And at this point, they shouldn't. So that's what I mean when I say that I think that we're in checkmate right now, is because there is no good way forward for this presidential election. Yeah, so that's just my thoughts on that. Can you hear me, bud?
I don't know if you can hear me, but I've lost sound.
Oh, great. I can hear you. I can hear you just fine. Ben, are you back there? Okay. So while we wait for him, I got to text Ben to see if he's still in the area. Sorry about this, everybody. Okay, so hopefully we can get Lyman to come back here. I think Ben had to get our stream up and running, and then he ducked out to go get something to eat because he got home from work right before we got started. So hope he jumps back in here real quick, and we'll be able to continue the stream as we were, because Lyman has a couple of really show you guys that he is developing over there at Hoplite. Yeah, sorry, Nick. But yeah, like I was saying, he's got so for the extremities, the arms, and the upper. Well, he's had upper shoulder body armor plates for a while now, but he's also got for the thighs to protect the femoral plates. So that will be neat. Hopefully. Yeah, now we just got my beautiful mug. Okay, so we might be a little assed out on this one here. So if anybody down in the comment section has any questions for me personally while we wait for Lyman, go ahead and type them at now. Let's see what we got over in the comments section. There he is. Can you hear me?
I don't know if you caught me, but I lost sound. I just had to like get out and come back in. Sorry about that. I don't know what the deal is.
Yeah, I could hear everything that you said. I don't know how much you heard from me and when we ducked out.
Yeah, well, I lost your epiphany, but
okay, so my epiphany was that what if Joe Biden is not the end goal? And when you're talking about chess and check and checkmate, I think that we're in checkmate right, because if Joe Biden pulls out the victory, the conservatives are never going to trust an election moving forward. That's they're just going to say be fraudulent unless there's a massive electoral reform that I think that we need to have paper ballots, voter IDs, and poll watchers in perpetuity. And I think that's the only way that we're going to pull that out. However, on the other side of things, I think that if Donald Trump uses one of his avenues moving forward to secure victory, persuading state legislatures to send friendly electors, or if it's something to do with the Supreme Court, you're going to have the other half of the country who's never going to trust the electoral process again. So I think that we're at checkmate right now because there is no good way to move forward with this unless everybody can bury the hatchet and come together to do an electoral reform that everybody's happy with. And if 2020 has taught us everything, getting Democrats and Republicans in the same room and a conclusion that makes both sides happy is impossible.
Yep, I totally agree. There's no way to make that happen.
Yep. We had a couple of comments.
Oppression.
Huh? What was that?
What I said, secession or oppression is what I.
Yeah, that's more and more every day seems to be the case. Let's see. Over in our comments here. So Joey Saunders wants to know, how do you feel about the National 2A protest in January? I wasn't aware that there was going to be one. Have you heard anything about that, Lyman?
No, I have not. And I don't know about something like that. You know, I suppose it's good to go out there and defy whatever it is they're telling you to do. But do I expect any of that to get us anywhere? No, I don't, sadly.
Yeah, me neither. At this point, we can take a look at the Richmond protest in Virginia that drew out 50 to 60,000 patriots armed to the teeth, and they left the area better than how they found it. And the shitbirds in the Virginia legislature still decided in the end to pass their raft of anti-gun laws and declare a state of emergency for an event that was 100% peaceful and 100% about coming together as Americans with common cause. So Yeah, I personally, I love it when Second Amendment people come together, and I love the visuals of people carrying enough firepower for a platoon with a smile on their face and having a 100% peaceful event that kind of juxtaposes with the fact that these people are prepared for war but are talking about peace. That to me is a beautiful thing. But at this point, it's pissing in the wind.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Unfortunately,
So let's move on to some
all
of the.
but
What's that?
yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say let's
No,
move on
I was just going to say the
to.
only.
Okay, let's move on to your cool
We got
new body armors that you're developing, if you want.
yeah. All right. Cool. Sure. Why not? Yeah. So I don't know if you can see that. That is the femoral plate. That is the right femoral plate. This is the left femoral plate, which are oddly mirrored in the camera. But yeah, so this is something I've been working on. This actually goes back to my origins in body armor, where I designed a full head to toe system. Um, but I knew the world wasn't ready for it, so I dialed that all the way back to shoulder plates. Something that I felt like the market would bear. And over time, I've leaked different photos about designs I'm putting together, and it probably doesn't hurt to have the Mandalorian show on there, full armor, and everybody gets excited about that. But I don't know that the full armor system makes sense, shins and forearms yet, but femoral plates and shoulder plates most definitely do. Everybody's aiming center mass, but you're not always going to hit center mass, so you want to protect those other areas. Shoulders are important because it's a gateway to the thoracic cavity. The femoral artery is obviously an issue in and of itself, and you want to protect that. And yes, I know people are thinking, yes, I am developing a groin plate. Don't worry, I got you covered. So yeah, there's that, and the plates are done and ready, right? This is a temporary label on it. This just says prototype, do not wear, although it is made from ballistic materials. Because we didn't validate it in the lab yet, we always put those stickers on it first. And I've got a carrier being made now. I think we're right on target to have this stuff on the market by the end of the year, maybe a little sooner. And that's very cool. But you know what I think is really cool is LTC was kind enough to give me a whole bunch of ballistic panels, just flat panels. I am, as you might imagine already, where I'm going with this. I'm armoring up the house, which is just a dream of mine, right? I mean, the next thing I want to do, and I've got certain goals in the armor industry. And it started with shoulder plates, and it'll move to femoral plates. And yes, then I'll do the shins and forearms and groin. And I'm working on a helmet project. But the final goal of anything that I'm doing with regards to armor, and when this is done, I'm going to retire and just go sit on a beach somewhere and just fade off into the sunset. But fortress homes is something I'm very interested in. And what I'm doing now is kind of a retrofit. That's not really the end goal. The end goal is to do new construction from the ground up. Concrete walls reinforced with steel, which, by the way, I think is the only viable use of steel in an armor situation is structural. But yeah, that's where I'm heading with it. It'll probably take me a couple of years to see it all through, but that I'm ready to sell the rights to everything and go sit in a hammock somewhere.
Yeah, I was gonna say that
or or or,
using.
or leave.
I didn't hear that. Could you say that again?
Go ahead. I said, go sit in a hammock or lead a secessionist movement, whichever comes first.
Yeah, I was gonna say using plates for structural armor to me just doesn't make a whole lot of sense compared to steel, because if
Yeah.
in any kind of an engagement in your house, you'd end up having to strip those out and replace them, whereas steel will just being over and over and over again, and you're not really worried about uh, fragmentation or anything if you're getting shot at on a wall or something like that. We got one question down here. He wants to know about the carrier, the actual carrier. Now, is this going to be like a injection molded polymer type carrier that you use for your shoulder plates? I think what is it, S&S Precision makes those, or are you going to be doing like more of a cloth pocket style carrier that hangs off of a belt for these femoral plates?
So the plate frame that you're alluding to, that S&S was making for me for a while, that wasn't actually injection molded. That's just sheets of Kydex that get heated and wrapped around a blank. And that's super cool and looks really cool and works pretty well. The problem is, taking multiple hits, what ends up happening is the frame breaks apart and you'll lose the plate before the functionality of the plate is done. So I'm pushing, there's a couple directions for the carriers. And that's part of why I switched the carrier on the shoulder plate to the laser cut fabric that we're using, because it can take hit after hit. And, as light as the plate frames are, this is lighter. But for the femoral plates and even for the shoulder plates moving forward, I'm developing two different concept carriers. One of which, so let's talk about the femoral plates. One of which would just be a standard plate bag that would connect to your battle belt, right to the molly on a battle belt, drop down two lateral straps around the leg, and you're good. You're solid. I've got a similar pocket type carrier for the shoulder plates that we've put together. But one thing that I really like to do, and the toughest part about this, is just getting a reliable vendor. I've got a guy who's really, really good. I mean, he is the best in the industry, and he's making all our soft goods right now, but he's in LA, and he's faced one issue after the other. And so, we've got, just lag time on some of this stuff that, it looks like we're finally moving through that. And if we can get to a point where it's stable, what I'd like him to do is put together some custom pants and even a custom shirt. So imagine the custom shirt, right? You got a pocket on the inside of the shirt. And inside there, you've got maybe some like compression fabric, right? Like an elastic band inside the sleeve. So from the outside, the sleeve hangs normally. You don't see the sleeve drawn tight. Everything's internal. And the same thing for the femoral plates. Where inside the leg of the pants, you've got a pocket, and then you've got this internal compression sleeve, for lack of a better term. And that's what would hold the plate in position. The pants would hold it in the position, vertically, and the compression sleeve would help to prevent it from traveling in any way. So, two different things that I'm exploring. The first one is real easy. A plate bag. Anybody can do that. Super simple. But I think the natural evolution of these things is to start to integrate them into clothing in such a way that maybe you mitigate wear stress a little bit, and you help to just create a more complete system, I think. So we'll see how well that goes with the vendor that's taking care of these things for me. But I think we're finally coming out of that um, that lag time that we suffered over some of these things. And if that's the case, then I'll be pushing full steam for that. In the meantime, the plate bags, I've got a couple different people working on that. That's easy stuff. Oh, I think I lost sound again.
No, it's Hobbs. Can you hear me, Lyman? Lyman, can you hear me?
Hang on a second. I can almost. Oh, I heard something. Say something. No, shit.
I know. Because you're on a laptop. Okay, don't blame them bots. The bots ain't doing anything.
Kylie, can you mute it for a second? They'll be right back. Lyman, can you hear me?
I've got nothing. But I'll show you something cool. So here's that. I can't hear you, but you can see this. So that's always nice.
Rick wants me to talk about my favorite restaurant. Well, let's see if Hobbs is back yet.
Well, the good news is I can hear you.
Well,
Can anybody hear me now?
now we can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. Awesome. I am so sorry about this, everybody. I don't know what the hell's going on with our system tonight. Anyways, going back to your new plates and the plate bags and everything. The first thing, what I was going to say before we lost audio there was the thing that immediately comes to my mind with the femoral plates is interference with a subload, like a drop leg holster or like a magazine shingle on your offhand leg or anything like that. So your plate bag prototypes that you have, is there any type of like a Molly
Right.
integrated into it to make sure that you, instead of like having a plate bag dropped off of your belt and a holster or a mag shingle or dump pouch or whatever dropped off of your other leg in conjunction with it, would there be any way to like have the femoral plates and then also have the holster or whatever attached to that plate bag, kind of integrate everything together?
You wouldn't actually attach it to the plate bag because the femoral plate goes for like facing the enemy. But it would leave the outside of your leg open, and you've got the two lateral straps coming off the plate bag, which act as a good landing zone for anything you'd want to put on there. Now, I don't like drop down holsters. I think they're a pain in the ass, honestly. And the only reason I was willing to do this stuff is because look how thin it is. That's 3/8 of an inch thick. This plate weighs just over 11 ounces, and it'll stop. It's a full level 3, and technically 3+ because it'll pick up 7.62 by 39 mild steel core. And because otherwise, if you got an inch thick plate, that's going to suck too. You need something very thin and light, and to the point where, just like with the shoulder plates, it sort of becomes a part of you. And that's the goal here. You may or may not be able to see it, but I put multiple curves on this thing, and you probably can't see it so good there, but obviously the curve this way, but then there's another about 8-degree curve on the other side, such that it you can literally roll it on the desk. It won't sit flat because it's not flat. And that's one of the benefits to it, and that fits the geometry of the human body in such a way that that load gets distributed it over a wider area. And that really is the key to wearability with armor, is that the better it fits the body, the less you feel it when you're wearing it.
Yeah, that's probably the number one problem that a lot of people have when trying to get themselves into body armor, especially women. I noticed when I was deployed, like, body armor plates are made for men and not particularly bulky men either. They're made for athletic guys, but not like bodybuilder type guys. And when you start putting like women's physique into it, they have a lot of problems with the chesticle area. Do you see yourself moving forward, or is that too much of a niche market? Do you think that you could develop some female type anatomy armor in the future too?
I see that coming down the pipe. Absolutely. We did a couple different things, solutions for which are fine and good. But honestly, the best thing you can do if you've got a lot of meat on your bones, or a female, is to find a plate that's got that curvature. I think that's why the 26135 is my most popular plate, because it's got really extreme curvature, more so than you would see in any other plate. And to the extent that, okay, it doesn't fit a female like you see on TV, in The Mandalorian, they got like full major curves on the thing, but it's curved enough that it'll fit a bodybuilder physique, or it'll fit a woman a lot better. But definitely there's some things that can be done there to improve on that, but there are also some limitations, right? So ceramic is a little more difficult to form those complex curves with, especially lower grade, less expensive ceramic. Even the polymer armors are only going to want to curve so much. So there's a number of things that have to be taken into consideration in order to make that work. But luckily, I work very closely with LTC, and they've got a team of engineers over there that really knows what they're doing. They've got a lot of in-house capabilities, so we're able to do different things, try different things, without a huge outlay of cash. I think LTC like to put their people on this stuff that I draw, because it allows their engineers to get experience and exposure to things that they otherwise would never see. Whether or not I'll go down that path anytime soon, I don't know. But that's certainly one of the things I'd like to accomplish before I move on, wherever that might.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Was going to be about the compound curves and how that affects the efficacy of the armor. On the technical details and whatever, but when you're holding up that femoral plate and you're talking about how it's technically 3+ rated, my mind immediately goes to, why is this not a helmet? Is there something about making a helmet out of that material and that threat level? Because I have a Team Wendy ballistic helmet, and it's about 3/8 of an inch thick, but it's rated 3A. It's a handgun and shrapnel helmet. So
right.
If you can get just a marginal increase in weight and a no increase in bulk and a substantial increase in protection, is there something about the manufacturing process that precludes that from becoming a reality?
No, in fact, LTC is working on rifle rated helmets right now, and there's currently a few places where you can get those, and they tend to be very expensive. But LTC is, as I say, they're in the development process now. I think they've already put together molds and samples, and right now they're just validating it. And as soon as those are ready, I'm going to have those available as well.
That is that's really good news, and that was one of the things that I've always wondered about. Is it I don't know if the ceramic plates have like a grain structure that when you start to curve it that much, it starts to degrade the protection of it or whatever. Like I said, I don't know anything about how these things are manufactured and whether the structural integrity gives up when you start to curb it too much. And I do know that there are some other companies out there that make your standard 3A helmet, and then they also have a ceramic applique that like you clip onto the front of it. But to me,
yeah,
seemed like a less than ideal solution because I think I've seen two companies that make one is velcroed on and the other is like it's almost like the jeans where you got like a stud, a ball, and like a spring loaded button that holds it on there. And a direct hit or even just like a sufficient enough concussive force is going to send either one of those.
Yeah, I think the goal with those is just to stop a single shot, and that's cool. And I can't say that I would be opposed to wearing those under the right circumstances, but I'd rather have a full rifle rated helmet. I mean, I think the downside of that is you're going to end up with one hell of a headache no matter what you do.
Yeah, that was what I told when I first bought my Team Wendy helmet, and everybody was asking me. Like what can it stop? What can it stop? And I said, oh, it can stop up to a 44 Magnum. And they're like, whoa, that's so cool. I'm like, yeah, but that impact will probably break my neck.
Break your neck. Imagine a 308 hitting your helmet. That could damage your neck. Yeah, probably true. And if it damages your neck, are you crippled? And if you're crippled, would you rather have just died? Maybe. So I think that's an individual question that you have to answer yourself. And I don't know, man. Somebody hand me a rifle rated helmet, I'd probably put it on without thinking too much about all those things. But definitely want to try to avoid getting hit in the first place. Movement is key.
And right there, you just made an excellent segue into my next question about you're layering on more and more of this armor. You already had your shoulder plates, which I haven't worn them, but they look a lot more comfortable than the plates that we were issued in the Army that restricted movement and made shouldering a rifle nearly impossible. And I think they're light for the same level of protection.
Yeah, they're lighter than your DAPs, and of course they considerably more. But when it comes to armor and levels of armor, extremity protection, all these things, it really just it has to be modular, and that's why I design all these things individually. You can wear it as a complete system, or you can pick and choose, and I think it's really kind of mission specific. If you're defending your home, okay, head to toe. But if you're running around in the desert or the jungle or the woods, you probably want to be as light as possible. So, it really just comes down to what you're doing and, what your goals are. So, for instance, like vehicle armor, if you're a mounted crewman and you're up in the turret, yeah, sure, do some forearms and shoulder plates. Um, you know, uh, the one thing I want to stress is, okay, while this is perfect for a SWAT team, I'll never sell it to a SWAT team because I don't ever want to see the things that I've designed and developed being used against the American people. And so, of course, that's the natural thought is, oh, this is great for a SWAT team. Yeah, you know what? It's perfect for a SWAT team, and they'll never get it from me. Everything we're talking about with all these communist, globalist, elitist. By no means will I ever do anything to support that endeavor. So all of these things are only available to the people, but the people have to make a decision, what it is that they're trying to protect or achieve. For most of us, I think that really just comes down to defending your home, in which case, okay, shoulder plates, femoral plates, maybe even some of these other additional plates and rifle rated helmets and so on, all these things start to make a little more sense.
Yeah, I agree totally. The first thing that I thought when I saw your forearms and shoulders and femorals, and I'm sure you're going to get into shins later on and everything, is like where on earth is this going to be applicable outside of like a guy's stacking up on a door in order to like bust down the door and raid a house or whatever. But if you flip that on the inverse, if you've got that on you, somebody trying to bust down your door and get into your house is going to be at a severe disadvantage. And I think that's something that a lot of people need to consider. If you got the time to put that stuff on and turn yourself into juggernaut or whatever, then
yep, that's it. Absolutely. And think about what I was saying before: a fortress, a home that you can't shoot into. Okay, well, that starts to make life a little bit easier. Now you can literally take your time putting on your gear. I mean, I get some pretty funny thoughts, when it comes to that. If I had this fortress home, I would just have a little clicker. I'd be sitting there in my robe sipping coffee. I wouldn't even be worried about putting on armor. I'd just push a little button, gasoline, sprinklers, whatever it is, right? And I've got all kinds of, crazy ideas about what I would do there, like, for instance, a false room. You kick down the front door, you think you're in. Guess what? The door behind you, you're stuck. I suck the air out of the room. You're watching me through right-rated glass, drinking my coffee, that kind of thing. So at a certain point, armor becomes something you don't even need to think about. If you've got a fortress home and all of the different integral parts of that I haven't really disclosed in full, well, now you don't even really need armor. But then again, you get in a vehicle, you go somewhere, you might want to have some armor in there. I'm even working on the vehicle armor. And a lot of what I'm doing right now is retrofit stuff, right? Retrofit for the house, retrofit for the vehicle, because that's what makes the most sense. That's how you get it to the people. But, when you start talking about new builds, whether it be a custom home or custom vehicles, now you can do some really cool stuff. It's all cool. I can't say anything bad about any of it, but even better when I can design it from the ground up. So we'll see where the future takes me. But these are all the things that are on the table, all the things that I can do, and quite honestly, it's things that no one else in the industry can do. LTC has the ability to make all these things real, but they don't have someone in there that does the design and understands the details of how to create complex surface geometry with programs like SolidWorks. Other companies, forget it. They're not doing anything. They're just buying from a manufacturer and spitting something out. So I think I'm very unique to do some very cool things. And it's kind of one of the things where, you can do it. So that's why you do it, but it also seems right, to provide these things to the American people, to deny them to the tyrannical governments that seek to control us. Maybe these are the sorts of things that give us enough of an advantage that make us scary enough that they don't even bother us. That's kind of the goal. I mean, I told my wife that a week ago. I said, my goal is to make this house so impenetrable that the thought of raiding it is so terrifying, right? That that I've got traps all over and that I'm going to just fuck you up 1,000 times over before you get to my front door, let alone the thought of you trying to shoot through the wall, which isn't going to happen. It makes the thought of doing something like that so terrifying that no one would try.
And isn't that kind of security what we all just really want deep down?
Oh man, I love the idea of putting these things into practice. Especially the idea of a custom build fortress home from the ground up. The shit I would do with that would just absolutely blow your mind.
Yeah, yeah, that I think that anybody that's looking to take care of their family, make their home a castle, and that is the kind of the founding of this country. When the British government tried to station troops in private homes, because we were all English back then, they'd say home is his castle, and that's why we have the Third Amendment. And out of all of the amendments in the Bill of Rights that we have right now, the third is the one that people look back and go like, what is the point of this? But at the time, it was a big deal because the government was trying to station troops in people's private homes, and a man's home is his castle. And if you can make your home a literal castle, then I think you're doing pretty well for yourself. Our buddy Rick over here, he says armor for the backs of seats because 3 people that he's dragged out of shot up cars were shot through the back of the seat where the bullets entered the trunk or a blind spot. So I've seen excuse me. Whew. I've seen a couple of this seems to be like a new trend that's coming up, is like these Molly panels that go on the backs of your seats, and I think that integrating a plate pocket into something like that and a seat shaped plate would probably be a pretty easy thing to accomplish.
I'm mounting something in the bed of my truck up against the back window, and I'm putting a little turret in it. Of course, you can exchange fire should that be something you feel like you can do. But because I explored all these things, and in my truck, it's a little difficult to get a panel behind the back seat. So I thought, okay, let's go behind that and let's just put it in the bed and mount it. If you do a polymer plate and you coat it in Line-X, it's going to be able to survive the element, the heat, the cold, the snow, the ice, what have you, no problem. So that's something that I'm doing for myself. But I make all these things available to anybody. You give me a call and you want something custom, well, that's easy enough to do. I draw it up in the computer and spit it out, no problem.
Yeah, that's that definitely sounds pretty cool, having your armored vehicle with your whole back window covered in everything. It reminds me of my very first deployment back in 2005, January 2005. It was right after the initial invasion of Iraq, and the up armored Humvees were just starting to roll into theater and everything. And in my first deployment, we had to actually drive from Kuwait across Iraq to our FOB that we were stationed at in Baghdad. And before we went, we had our regular Army vehicles, and our welding shop spent the whole 2 weeks, like 18-hour days, trying to put like hillbilly armor on these trucks. And we had sandbags in the floorboards and sandbags behind the seats and steel plate. I mean, it was a chop job.
Yeah,
but
want to do that to the vehicle.
Huh?
Wouldn't want to do that to the family vehicle.
Probably not. I mean, I would. I think that would be kind of a neat thing. My wife would probably not be too keen on up armoring the Hyundai.
With sandbags and steel, I mean, my God, gas mileage and the strain on the transmission and everything else. Yeah, you're gonna have some problems. But lightweight polymer armor, add another 15, 20 pounds, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, it's just another kid, right?
More or less, yeah. 20 pounds, what is that? That's a young child, so that's easy to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's see. Yeah, one thing that I wanted to ask about was you kind of dropped an offhanded comment the last time that we talked on here about speaking to some people up in British Columbia in Canada about your secession plans and whatnot, and completely randomly, and I don't know if this is an instance of Facebook's algorithms actually doing their job for once or whatever, but shortly after that, I started seeing people talking about what they call the Wexit movement in Canada, Western Canada trying to secede from Eastern Canada.
Yep.
And why don't you just kind of jump into some of that and I don't know, the plans, or just the writing on the wall, or just the talking amongst yourselves, or whatever else that it is that you've got going on with that.
So there is a big movement in Alberta to do just that, to secede. They want to become the 51st state. I've been in contact with these people. I've been in contact with and am in continual contact with the people that are putting all that together. And my comment to them is, I understand you want out, but believe me, you don't want into this. Best that we try to establish something new. And that's where a lot of that secession talk comes from. And look, Montana can do it in and of itself, but the more states, the more provinces, the more people that we add to it, the better, the stronger we'll be. And theoretically, you could create a new nation that stretches from Alaska to Texas, and you can let the East and West Coast and their neighboring cohorts, do what they want, and leave them alone. Give them the same courtesy that we look for from them. Go about your way. You want to be communist? You want to, lose your way? Go ahead. The biggest, problem that I see for these people that, might vote for the sorts of people that Biden represents, if they get what they want, they're going to regret it the next day when there's a boot on their neck. So, but if that's what they want, let them have it. I'll have no part in it. Never will I capitulate. Never will I allow myself to fall under their control. Not by a vaccine, not by a chip, not by anything. Not 1 inch. They've already taken too much. So but for those people, they go ahead and do what you want. But conceptually, we could establish a new nation that stretches from Alaska to Texas. Do I think it'll be that big? No. I think that's the best outcome for the people, is exactly that. But I don't actually think that will happen. I think at best you get maybe a state or two to join Montana. And you could probably bring along a couple provinces, Alberta and Saskatchewan. Believe it or not, a lot of British Columbia is very conservative, with the exception of Vancouver. So you may be able to get a large portion of Canada to go along with that plan. But I don't have a whole lot of hope in collective human decision making. I just don't. And I hope I'm wrong, but that's just kind of where I'm at. From what I've seen, from what I've experienced, I sort of think there's a limitation there to what people are willing to accept, and how radical of a change they're willing to make. It reminds me of what was it? Mark Twain said, it's the patriot stands alone, something to that effect, right? It's only after the patriot has won his cause that the other people join in, because they have nothing to risk. And so it is with this sort of thing. It's a real dangerous and dark time for humanity. We've got a curtain of communism trying to close in around us. And unfortunately, many people are just too caught up in that little device in their hand, and not willing to look up and take an account of what's going on around them. And even if they did, would they be willing to make the tough decisions to do what is needed to be done? I question that. I really do. And I hope I'm wrong. But I'm sort of the opinion that it will be the few rather than the many.
Yeah, that is. I'm sitting here trying to wrap my brain around the idea of a new superstate that runs from Alaska all the way down through Canada, through Montana and the Midwest, all the way down to Texas, that sort of like diagonal stripe across North America. And I'm sitting there thinking that's a lot of territory. That's a lot of natural resources. That's not a lot of people, but it's basically everything that makes the world run. You've got industry, you've got agriculture, you've got mineral resources, you've got timber, you've got the tar sands up in Canada, you got the oil fields in Texas, you've got deep water ports in Alaska and down in Texas. I mean, really, logistically speaking, that type of new superstate would be not only feasible, but also very easily done.
Yeah, it absolutely has all the right ingredients for starting over, which is what it takes. And I like to remind people that, Montana has the largest repository of nuclear weapons in the United States. And if we were to secede, don't expect us to give those up either.
Yeah, that was one thing when I talked to my buddy Alex, who lives in Wisconsin. He's a Russian immigrant, and he was around for the collapse of the Soviet Union. That was one of my big questions to him was, Russia had a lot of nuclear weapons spread around those Soviet bloc states. I'm like, how did they manage to deal with that? And he basically said that that the new Russian Federation agreed to absolve all of the satellite states of their sovereign debt in exchange for the relinquishment of all of their nuclear arms. Now, I'm not 100% sure of how Montana's doing, but I don't think you guys have a whole lot of sovereign debt up there that would be in need of relinquishing in exchange for those nuclear weapons. So it kind of throws a monkey wrench into that idea, right?
Well, when you're talking about national debt and state debt, that is the epitome of unsecured debt. And, going back to the Klaus Strauss or whatever his name, right? He made this statement that all this debt will have to be paid back in some way, he says, by future generations. And I'm thinking, has to in some way? No, I don't think so. It's unsecured debt. You can eat it, deal with it. Sorry, too bad, Federal Reserve. Too bad, China. The only thing that maybe we should pay back is the bonds held by American citizens.
Right. I think it was economist Milton Friedman who said that all debts are eventually paid off, whether it be by the debtor or the debtee. Somebody pays for it. And people like, that we owe money to, the Federal Reserve, China, whatever, when it comes, like, eat it. And what the fuck are you going to do about it?
Right. Exactly. That's exactly where I'm coming from. What are you going to do about it? China, you're not going to do a damn thing. And if you try, you'll get your ass handed to you. Federal Reserve, look, round those people up and get some ropes, because I'm quite certain they're guilty of treason. Bring them to court, do the proper thing there and run things through the proper channel. But, these people are operating outside of constitutional constraints, and there's absolutely no reason that we should allow that to be the case, nor should we saddle future generations with any debt whatsoever. You want a great reset? There it is. Wipe out the debt. Any should be for the benefit of people. And, we're not talking about the world here. It's not our job to provide for the world. It's our job to provide for the American people. And that's it.
Yeah, that is probably the number one thing that I've always wondered about this great reset that this Klaus Schwab guy is always talking about. In his mind, the Great Reset is a complete reboot of the operating system of Western society to kind of, I guess, in essence, bring us down to the level of the rest of the world. Whereas the operating system of of America has been, up until recent history, has been to simply give people the opportunities to bring themselves up as high as they can, with the idea that a rising tide raises all ships. In essence, it's that sort of that capitalistic idea that if I do really, really well, those around me will do really well, and those around them will do well. Everybody's going to get a little bit better. Some will just get a little bit better than most due to the fact that they can invent things, or they're good at business or whatever. And as long as you make that money ethically, make as much as you can.
Right. Absolutely. And absolutely wipe out all that debt too. It's as simple as that.
Right, because you take a look at, America's what? I mean, we're at what, 28, 29 trillion and counting. Who do we owe that money to?
Yeah, good question. I'd love to see a tally of that, but I think the majority of it is the Federal Reserve, who prints our money and lends it to us, and collects our taxes on top of it. And just no thank you to all of it. They're right about one thing. We need a great reset, but it's not anything like what they envision. It needs to be, as I've said, something that benefits the American people exclusively. I'm sorry, but the rest of the world is not our problem, and it's never going to be. And I'm never going to accept that it will be. Anything that we want to do to help us, that's great, good. But that too should be done at the direction and with the approval of the American people.
Yeah, when I take a look at the Federal Reserve, I think it was back in like 2005 or 2006 when I watched a movie on YouTube, and anybody can go look it up. It's still there. It's a little cartoon. It's 30 minutes long. It just lays out what the Federal Reserve is. It's called The American Dream, and you can check it out. And when I watched that movie and they told me that the Federal Reserve makes our money and loans it to us at interest, which means that we will have a debt that can never be repaid by design, because every dollar lent has interest attached to it. So if you borrow more to pay off that interest, you incur more interest. When I first saw that, when I was like 23 or 24, my mind was absolutely blown, and that's what got me down the path that I am today. And if you haven't seen that movie, y'all need to go watch it.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. I think I've seen the same one and others like it. And certainly people need to educate themselves about these things and the details of these things and what it all means. But in short, that's where we're at, and there's only one way out of that. And you talk about chess. I love this analogy, right? So, all right, we're playing a game of chess, let's say, with the deep state, and they're cheating and they think they've got us in checkmate. Well, there's one thing we can do to completely wipe that out, and let's just turn the table over and punch them in the face, right? That's the way it's going to have to happen. I promise you that they are going to try to force you to take a vaccine. At some point, they're going to give you a microchip. Klaus Straub was talking about this just recently, these microchips and even mind control chips, he even said. I mean, my God, these people are out of their mind. So, when it comes to all those things, your only answer has to be no. And without any negotiation, without any discussion, just a flat out no. And so my advice to people out there, and I think we need to cut it because I'm going to get yelled at here in a minute, but my advice, if I were to leave people with anything, is do not comply. Do not comply. If there's a law or a regulation or an international request that violates constitutional law, and let's remember, the United States Constitution is the supreme law from which all other law is derived and subordinate to. So any subordinate law that's passed that is in contradiction to the United States Constitution is by default null and void. And I'll take that another step further, and you've heard me talk about this. State constitutions. These are the legally binding agreements by which states join the Union. Montana was smart enough to put an abolishment clause in there. Article 2, Section 2. Montana can operate as a free, sovereign, and independent state We can dissolve our form of government anytime we seek to do so, legally speaking. And when we're talking about legal documents, if one party breaches contract, the contract is null and void. And I would go so far as to say that the federal government has already done that. And by no means would I ever allow any international institution, whether it be the World Economic Forum or the UN, at no point would I give them any authority to dictate any solutions whatsoever to any of our concerns, because they have no authority. And we fall on the supreme authority, which is our constitutional law, state and federal. Period.
And with that, I think that that is a good place to end it for the night. Thank you very much, everybody who stuck with us and watched it through our little technical difficulties. I apologize for all of that, but it is what it is when you're dealing with the internet. Our guest tonight was Lyman Bishop from Hoplite Armor, the man with the plan from Montana land. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Lyman. I appreciate it. I always enjoy talking to you because it's always a very heady and intellectual conversation despite my drinking. I think that we accomplished a lot tonight, and I look forward to the next time we talk. If anybody is interested in the body armor that Lyman sells, that's hoplitearmor.com. If anybody is interested in the merchandise that we sell on roadstoliberty.com, you can see it up on the little sticky note up there in the corner. Thank you very, very much for joining us tonight. If you haven't subscribed, please do so, and go to Hoplite Armor and get yourself armored up, because things are probably going to get bad before they get better. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a wonderful night.